Welcome, everyone. My name is Anna Amare, and I'm a level 2 Gottman trained therapist and individual therapist in Houston, Texas. I am also a licensed clinical social worker and a certified group psychotherapist. And we're here today to share this video with you. I'm here with my colleague Emilio. He's going to share a little bit about himself in a little bit. But we are going to talk today about Imago and Gottman, two paths to better connection. So we're really excited and happy to have you guys listen to this video, and we hope that you find it very helpful. Emilio?
Hello, everyone. My name is Emilio Anguiano. I am a licensed chemical dependency counselor. I am also a certified group psychotherapist, and I am also an Imago couples therapist and a workshop presenter. And I'm very, very happy to be here with you, Anna. I really, really like this topic. And what we want to do is just sharing with you guys our motivation for becoming a couples therapist. We really want to demystify this topic because for some people, it is a very complicated topic. And we really want to show you guys how these two methods they have a lot of value, and we actually believe that they have a lot in common, even when they are two very different approaches. We hope that with this video, you guys can learn a little bit about the basic points of each approach. And we are only sharing our professional experience, and this is based in our learnings, in our trainings. And spoiler alert, we may use some terminology that can be a little bit complicated. We will try to keep it very simple and very basic because we want everyone to understand what we are saying. So very happy to be here with you, Anna, and with everyone.
Thanks, Emilio. Well, let's start with telling people a little bit about each of our approaches. So like I said, I'm trained in Gottman method, and this is a method that was created by two psychologists, very well known, Doctors John and Julie Gottman, over 40 years ago. They created it starting in the 1980s, and they've been working for many decades with many couples to try to help them identify and correct behaviors that are destructive to relationships. So they've done a lot of research. They've observed couples throughout the years, and they've been able to identify with like 90% accuracy. They can predict whether a couple will divorce based on watching the behaviors of how the couple interacts. They're very famous for that. They've written many books, and they have developed the Gottman method couples therapy to train other therapists to provide to teach partners, to teach couples skills to better communicate, to improve the friendship between them, to do conflict better, to manage conflict more effectively, and to also build like a shared sense of meaning between the couple, to really develop a shared legacy, to make the relationship itself a source of meaning and purpose for both of them. And so these are the three basic principles, or the three basic levels that Gottman focuses on: a couple's friendship, better conflict management, and shared meaning.
Yes, and I love that. Yes, and I love that Dr. John and Julie, they are actually a couple from what I have, from what I understand. And this is great because in Imago, I think these are two like parallel histories, because in Imago, Harville Hendricks and Helen Lakely Hunt, they are also a couple.
Oh, wow.
And they are also what they say is that when they were facing and struggling with some conflicts in their relationship, they decided to work together in publishing a very well-known book that is the name is Getting the Love You Want, that was a bestseller. And they decided to create this methodology, and it was developed also on the 80s. And the core concept is that we are unconsciously drawn to our partners. Imago is coming from the word in Latin that means image. And what this approach says is that in childhood, we build up our own imago that is impacted with what we receive from our caregivers and all our unmet needs. And this is something that is going to impact the way that we see the world, and also it's going to impact in the way that we choose our partners. So in Imago, we work with this unfinished business from childhood, and this is a unique opportunity to heal childhood wounds through a very structured and conscious dialogue process that I'm going to describe later. But I see a lot of similarities, and actually, I have seen these four important founders in events and having a dialogue about the true approaches. And yeah, I'm very happy to be here with you, Anna, because we can also do this dialogue from what we practice day to day in our offices.
I love that, Emilio. I really love that the approach of, we can't go back to our childhood and heal the things that we didn't get in our families of origin, but we can definitely heal through our relationship. And I love that. I love that Imago does that. I think Gottman also has that component, and I love that couples can heal each other through their relationship. That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, let's get started with some questions that we prepared so that we can share with our audience the basic concepts about these two methods. So I'll start. So Emilio, when a couple chooses to work with you using this Imago framework, how does the process typically start?
Okay, I think that for many couples, starting a process in with a couples therapist is a decision that it is really, really hard to take, hard to make. I know some couples that maybe a colleague provide my name, and they usually sometimes wait some days, some weeks, or even some months before making the first phone call. And even when they reach out and they do the phone call, not all the time they are ready to set the appointment. Because I feel, and I am talking not only from my professional experience, I am talking also from my personal experience. Doing couples therapy, it is very, very scary. And many people are very, very afraid about how is that going to be, right? Usually there is someone in the relationship that is more interested than the other. So the process usually start with the first session, where I really, really like to talk about and to know the couple. One of my favorite questions is how they met, how they fall in love, right? And knowing a little bit about the story of the relationship. So I think that is the first point, like just knowing the couple and also meeting them where they are. Some couples, they may be in crisis, right? Like at the edge of separation or getting divorced. Some of them, they are not in crisis, but they want to do what I call preventive work. Like they want to start working on themselves. Sometimes we even have couples that are getting ready to get married. And before making that commitment, they like to start couples therapy.
That's great. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's similar with my approach. When a couple reaches out, I usually offer a 15-minute Zoom brief, like 15-minute Zoom session where we just meet and I tell them about the Gottman method. I tell them what I can offer them. They tell me a little bit about where they are so that I can see if I can really help them or not. And we see if we're a good fit. And then the process starts with an in-depth assessment process, which is basically like three parts. One is a joint session, which is similar to what you were saying, where I ask a lot about the history of the relationship, how they met, what was their dating period life. If they're married, how did they decide to get married? If they have kids, what was that transition like? what have been some of the good times in the relationship, what have been the hard times in the relationship, and what is a good relationship to them, what is a good relationship and what is a bad relationships. And that's very interesting to hear, right? And then also, like, what are some of their their rituals that they already have? Do they have traditions? Do they have things that, ways in which they do things and celebrate, I don't know, birthdays or anniversaries? What are those things, those traditions, or those moments in the day where they connect, if any? So that's what happens in the first session with 2 of them. And then I do individual sessions with each of them separately, where I gather a lot of just their individual perspective on the relationship and then their family history. We go in depth into their own family history to understand, like what we were saying earlier, what happened in childhood and how that may be impacting the relationship, right? And also to know if there anything that they didn't feel comfortable sharing with their partner, right? In the first joint session. We also talk about personal goals. Anyway, it's to learn, to find out about them in a more dedicated way, right? And then I meet with both of them individually, and then we come back together. Also, part of the process is they fill out some questionnaires, some really in-depth questionnaires that really give me a lot of good information about what the couple is really needing, what their strengths are, and what their areas to improve are, right? And then we come back together for a joint session for me to tell them what I see and what I recommend in terms of treatment, like what are their strengths and what are some areas to improve. So that's basically how the process starts with me in Gottman method. Mm-hmm.
That is awesome, Anna. And tell me and tell us more about like how it would be a typical Gottman session. How this would look like with a couple.
Yeah. Well, every case is different. So I tailor my approach a lot to the couple and where they're at, like you were saying. But once we finish the assessment process, those initial sessions that I mentioned, then the work actually begins. And so in a typical session, it usually lasts 90 minutes. In some cases, it can last 50 minutes. But we usually start, the couple comes in and we do a little bit of a grounding exercise where we just all sit down and kind of, we're all coming from our different activities, our work, our, whatever we were doing throughout the day. I'm coming from another session. So we all just start with like grounding, connecting with our breath, connecting with our bodies, kind of like checking in with what we're coming in with, how we're feeling and what our intention is for the session. So I guide them in a very brief, like 1 to 2 minute exercise to just get us grounded in the session, right? And then after that, I do a little check-in where I ask them, what's gone well, what's been hard since I last saw you, right? And so they usually tell me something about the relationship that's gone well, and usually there's something that's gone badly, right? And based on what they tell me, it's the intervention that I use, right? Based on Gottman method. So if they tell me, we had a horrible fight, this weekend and we're still very upset, then I use an intervention called the aftermath of a fight or a regrettable incident, right? Or if, they tell me, oh, we just keep having this fight about, how to discipline our children, then we talk about, we do a dreams within conflict intervention where they both share. And what I love about Gottman interventions is that we get the partners to talk to each other. So I'm just kind of like guiding them. I'm just observing, and I'm like interrupting when I see one of the behaviors, one of the 4 horsemen that Gottman has identified, the 4 behaviors that are very destructive to relationships. One of them, criticism. The other one is defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. Those 4 behaviors, if I observe them while they're dialoguing about a particular conflict, then I interrupt and I try to redirect them and ask them to speak, rather than attacking their partner or criticizing, to speak from what they need and to say, I feel this, I need this, right? Rather than you make me feel, you do this wrong, right? So I guide them through this dialogue. And so it's based on what they come in with that I will pull the intervention that I think is most effective. There are about 5 or 6 interventions. If they don't come in with something specific, then I'll usually do an exercise, for example, help them practice empathy skills. how to build more empathy, or talk about what they need. I have these needs cards, and so they do an exercise where they talk about their needs in their relationship, right? Or we do usually in the beginning also we do like the basics of like how to communicate, what are communication rules, right? Use I statements, stay on one topic, don't bring in too many topics at a time. So really it's based on what they come in with and what I think will be most effective for that session. And then I ask them to practice those skills that I teach them during the week. So at the end of the session, we kind of just wrap it up and we close, and I ask them like, what's your intention? What do you want to practice these next 2 weeks? Or I'll say something, what is something you're taking away from this session? Or maybe what's something that you want to reflect on more during, these next week or two before I see you next. Yeah. So that's kind of how it goes in a usual Gottman session. What about in Imago?
That is awesome. That is awesome. And as I was listening to you, I was thinking how I do believe that these perspectives are sisters, because we have a lot in common. In Imago, what we like to do is on the first session, we explain a concept in Imago that we call the space in between. The space in between is the symbolic place where the relationship is living. And what we like to help the couples to understand is that in some moments in the relationship, there may be very connected, very close, very attuned to each other, but sometimes they may be a mesh, or they may be in conflict, right? Or they may be distant, right? But regardless, the space in between the two of them, we call it a sacred space, because if we deposit accusation, judgment, criticism, that is going to impact the relationship. So in Imago, what we want to do is to become aware of this space and to do real listening, right? We try to help the couples to learn to validate each other. Validation is not agreement, but it's you're showing your partner that you are able to understand some part of what they are saying, right? You're crossing a bridge to their world, and you are trying to understand how is the experience for them. And the last part is empathy, where we want to help them to talk about emotions and to express them. So this is very, very similar to what you were sharing. We also start the session with, I like to call them micro meditations. And I was loving when you were talking about that, because you were saying this is also something that is for me, because I'm coming from a different session maybe, or from a different space. And I love this, because I enjoy my micro meditations, because I do the meditation with them. It is the same. It is usually 3-4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. And then in Imago, they face each other, right? Usually one is the sender and the other is the receiver. And then at a certain point we switch. And these sessions can be also, I like to do 45-minute sessions, but some couples, they really, really want to do a deeper work. So we do 80-minute sessions. And even with some couples that they travel from other city, or that they are too busy to have weekly or bi-weekly sessions, we do intensives that can be 120 minutes or maybe more, with a couple of breaks once a month. That is also something that we do. The only thing that we try to do in Imago is we try to avoid individual sessions, because we want to keep the energy in the relationship. Me, myself, I offer phone support calls, but I just make them very clear that I don't hold any secret, and that anything that they want to disclose to me at one point, they are going to bring this to the sessions.
Yeah, that's so important. I do the same. I tell them that I can't hold any secrets for the couple, and encourage them to if it's something important that the other person needs to know, that it needs to, help them, encourage them to disclose it in a session or, outside of the session, but to disclose it. Yeah, that's so important. I think another thing I wanted to ask you is like, what is your favorite intervention or skill that you teach couples in an Imago session? What's your favorite?
That is a hard question because I love everything that Imago provides for therapists and for couples. I actually don't see couples if they don't like or don't see the benefit in Imago. I like to say that Imago is not for everyone. It is just one approach, is one tool. Um, so I would say that is not for everyone, and it doesn't work for every couple or every relationship. But for those who works, it works pretty well. Like I have couples that they stay in process more than 6 months, even 1 year, 2 years, and they really love it. And they use these skills not only in sessions, they also use these skills at home. So I think my favorite thing to teach couples is developing an awareness about what is their communication style. In Imago, we say that when we start to struggle with facing the world, when we are babies, toddlers, kids, some of us, we learn to go inside, right? And we call them in Imago minimizers. So minimizers tend to be more not necessarily introverted. This is not about socializing, but they tend to go inwards. And they when they have a conflict, when they are having a frustration, they tend to implode. They don't really talk about their feelings. They don't really share their thoughts. And we use a metaphor. We call them a minimizer. We call them a turtle, right? Because the turtle, have this capability to just go inside. They have this beautiful shell, right? And that is the minimizers. On the other side, we have the maximizers. Maximizers, they tend to be very expressive. They tend to express their feelings, their thoughts. They usually feel responsible for making the relationship work. They are the ones that are trying to repair, to give apologies. And the metaphor that we use for maximizer is the octopus, right? And octopus, when they are frustrated, when they are angry, they tend to explode, right? And what I love about these two metaphors is that I can teach very easily to couples that no one is better than the other, right? There can be healthy octopus, unhealthy octopus, healthy turtles, unhealthy turtles, right? And actually, they attract to each other, right? So one of them usually is going to gravitate to one or the other, right? And this is a good opportunity for them to learn from each other, because the octopus, they can get entangled with all these tentacles. So the octopus needs to learn how to go inside, right? And the turtle, the turtle can be too much in their inner world. So the turtle needs to learn how to open up, right? So a turtle is gonna be a great teacher for an octopus, and an octopus is gonna be a great teacher for a turtle. What about you?
Oh, I love that metaphor. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I had never heard it before. I like to teach one of the favorite things in the beginning that I think really makes a difference is teaching couples about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, as John Gottman and Julie Gottman call it, referring to, it's a biblical reference to the four horsemen in the last book of the Bible that predict or announce the end of the world. Right. So these four behaviors, I like to teach couples, what are these four behaviors that can predict the destruction of a relationship, right? And what their antidotes are. not only what the behavior is, but what is the antidote that they can use instead of the behavior, right? And so the first one, I'll just talk about the first horseman, which is criticism. And the antidote is gentle startup, right? So teaching couples how to start the relationship in a way that's going to increase the chances that their partner is going to hear them, that their partner is not going to get defensive, right? Because that's the second horseman is defensiveness, right? But if you learn, if one of the, the person who's initiating the discussion can begin it with gentle startup, a gentle way of starting, then defensiveness won't show up, right? So it's a formula, which is about X, I feel Y, and I need Z. It's very simple. It's that formula, right? And so I teach, we go through scenarios, like pretend scenarios with these little cards that I have about different topics, say finances, right? So we talk about the scenario, like your partner has been spending a lot of money lately, and you're upset about that, right? So you teach them an example of what would be a harsh startup. You are such a wasteful person. You can never spend money. You're out of control. Like something like that would be harsh with a lot of you statements, right? So we practice how to do gentle startup, about our recent spending, honey, I am feeling very stressed out or worried. And I want to ask if we can put together a budget, right? Something like that. So teaching that simple tool is very helpful, and the visual of the four horsemen, it usually scares couples, to be honest. Like when they hear about the four horsemen, then they realize, oh my gosh, we are falling into these behaviors. That can feel very, very scary, right? But teaching them that there are antidotes and watching them become more and more aware of when the horsemen show up in the room. And I also tell them, like, part of my role is to catch those horsemen when I see you falling into those behaviors, to help you become aware of those things, of when you're falling into those behaviors, and think about an alternative. Think of using the antidote, right? When there's criticism, then try to use gentle startup. So that's one of my favorite ones, and one that I always use with the couples that I help.
I love it, Anna. And tell me more. I'm going to ask you a difficult question.
Okay.
From a Gottman perspective, how would you define a successful process with a couple?
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I think that a successful process with a couple is when the couple, usually when they come in, most couples are in what Gottman calls negative perspective, right? They tend to interpret everything that their partner does from a negative standpoint, even if it's something neutral. If you're in negative perspective, you tend to interpret it negatively, right? And I explain it to them, and this is from another couples therapist. I stole this from. She uses the metaphor of the blue colored glasses. Oftentimes we have blue colored glasses on, and we see our partner through blue colored glasses, right? That's Dr. Julia Babcock's metaphor. And I love to use it, and it's so helpful for couples. And so a successful process is when a couple is able to take off those blue colored glasses to see their partner more realistically, more neutrally or positively, right? And when they're able to see their own part in what you call the space between the couple, right? The dynamic, what happens between them, right? When they're able to see how they contribute to that dynamic, right? And they go from my partner does this and they do this and they make me feel this, to, oh, this is what I do, this is what I do, and this is what I can actually, if I change this, that changes the dynamic, right? So when those things start to click in the partner, and when you start to see them change the way, because couples are always going to have conflict, right? Many of their conflicts, Gottman says that I think 60 to 70% of conflict are going to be perpetual problems that the couples are really not going to solve, right? Only really 30% of problems are solvable. So couples are always going to have conflict, but if they come to a way that instead of being gridlocked about conflict, they can dialogue about it, understand each other, and through that dialogue and understanding, connect at an emotional level. Emotion is the most important thing. in the Gottman method, that they can actually like understand the emotions underneath their partner's positions, why it's so important to them, why they feel this way, what is the dream underneath that conflict, and where they can really understand that is what I call success in a process. Yeah, tell me what you see, what you call success.
Well, that is awesome. I was thinking in how it is similar in Imago, because we also work for helping the couple to have a conscious relationship. And in Imago, we try to, I would say that a successful process for me is when they can understand the stages of the relationship. And I want to point that some couples, they may need some sessions and they may have a process that is only some weeks. Some other couples, they may need a process that is going to last some months. And for other couples, it may be a more like a long-term psychotherapy process, and they may stay for more than 1 year or 2 years. So I was thinking that every couple has different needs, right? And for some couples, a successful process is just having the experience to try couples therapy and just to realize that is a space where they can express freely about how they feel and trust a professional, regardless how long they stay. So that's what is was coming to my mind, like that I wouldn't measure success with couples staying in a long process or for a length of time. I would say that a successful process is those where they can understand these stages of the relationship. And we say, in a nutshell, that the relationship starts with this romantic stage where we have these neurochemicals in our brain, right? There is some controversy about if it lasts some months or 2 years or 3 years, but we have all this infatuation, right? It's like feeling intoxicated with this or with all these neurochemicals in our brain, and we fall in love, and everything is like magic, and the sex is amazing, and the connection is there, and everything is so easy, right? But sooner or later, we know that relationships, they transition to the power struggle. And it can be anything, right? It can be just like the toothpaste or the socks in the floor or the towel, right? Or maybe some other struggles like, are we going to have kids or not? Are we going to get married or not? Or buying a house, right? And, some couples, they split, they break up in this stage of the relationship. But some others, they can move for doing the work, for gaining knowledge, for practicing skills, right? And some of them, they can move to awareness, right? To a place of intentionality, to a place of curiosity, and then finally to the final stage, that is the real love. That is safe. It can have passion. Maybe not like the romantic stage, but it is a more mature form of love. So that's what I would say, Anna. And I have another question for you.
Yeah.
I would like to know what specific materials, like assessment or exercises, do you use to support the work?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I use a lot of materials, and Gottman is very structured, which I love because couples therapy can sometimes get very intense, right? It's couples come in and they're usually upset. They've been on, one of them or both of them are unhappy. They have a lot of complaints, and there's a lot of, it's laden with emotion, right? So Gottman's assessments and tools really help me as a couples therapist kind of be grounded and have like a structured way of teaching, of showing, of modeling all the skills and all the approaches, right? So yeah, I use from the initial interview, I have, a set of questions that I always use, the questionnaires, which are online, that's a very important tool that gives me a lot of information, and where couples can make comments and add things about each section, which it's basically an assessment of the 3 levels that I mentioned: their friendship, their how they manage conflict, and how connected they are in terms of shared meaning, right? So those questionnaires I use, and then I also use, depending on the intervention, I have the cards that I mentioned, like these expressing needs cards, right, that I may use, or I have expressing empathy cards, and we can practice with those. I also have like practice scenarios that I use when I teach gentle startup. And then I have just different, if we're depending on what we're working on, they often don't know where to start. So I offer them like questions that they can ask their partner, right? Or I can offer them like a guide for how to do gentle startup. Like, what are the rules when you're the speaker, and what are the rules when you're the listener? And so they have that in front of them. And in the beginning, sometimes for couples, it can feel a little bit like, like awkward to use like a sheet of a guide, a printed guide. And like, we're not going to have this when we're out in the real world, right? When we get into conflict in the real world. But I tell them that, they're going to practice, in the beginning, they may use the guide, but as they learn it, then they eventually won't need it. Right. And so, yeah, I use a lot of materials that help me in the process, and that keep me and the couples like grounded in the process. Yeah. What about in Imago? What materials do you use with couples?
Well, it's very similar. Something that I appreciate about the two perspective is the generosity of the founders, because the 4 of them, they have wrote several books who are available for the public. And in these books, in Imago, in these books, all they have a lot of exercises and a lot of like practical ideas about how to improve communication in the relationship. Also, both perspectives, they have retreats, they have workshops. In Imago, we have handbooks, we have handouts, we have working sheets. And I really, really like to be attuned to the needs of the couple, because I have couples that they really, really love homework, right? Like some of them, they really enjoy journaling and they like to do stuff. Some of them, they are very creative, right? But some other couples, they don't like homework. They are too busy. Their life is their agenda is very complicated. So they don't really enjoy homework. So I really try to be attuned to each couple and to try to understand what is going to be working more for them. But you are right. You were talking about some couples that may be a little hesitant about like following a structure. There is also, in my experience, there is also the other extreme, that are couples that really, really want to go by the book, and they really, really want to go precise, right? So it is very fun for me as a therapist to be mindful about this and to help them, right? When they are too rigid, I try to help them to be more flexible. And when they are too flexible, I like to help them to provide more structure.
Yeah, and that also is what makes the work interesting with them, right? That no couple is the same, and you get, you learn about people's stories and how they, their personalities and the way they interact, and it's fascinating to really get to know each couple and their style, and what they like, what they don't like, and I think that's part of what makes this work fascinating too. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's important also, Anna. I don't know if our viewers what is coming to their head when we talk about a couple, but I think it would be important just to clarify that when we are talking about couples, as we mentioned a little bit before, it doesn't matter if they are living together or not. It doesn't matter if they are married or not. We are not only talking about heterosexual couples. We are talking also about any couple in the spectrum of diversity. And also there is relationships that are only not, they engage not only 2 people, They can be open, they can be triples, they can be poly constellations, and also bicultural couples with different ages. So I really want to clarify for the audience that when we are saying couple, we
Yeah.
are not setting in stone a particular kind of couple. Like some of the couples they are monogamous, and some of them they are not monogamous. So what do you think about this?
I totally agree. I think in terms of Gottman, I'm when I was training Gottman, I believe it's for couples, two people, right? And my training is for with two people. I actually don't know, and that's a really good question that you ask, if it works with more than two people or in polyamorous relationships. But yeah, I mean, in terms of other than that, like, yes, couples who are maybe recently, they've been dating for a year or less, or maybe they are engaged and planning to get married, or maybe they've been engaged and living together, or maybe they don't want to get married but they live together. Couples that have been married for 40 years or 25 years, or that have children, or maybe they have grandchildren at any stage of a couple's life, for sure. And yes, like you said it, Gottman has evidence with couples that are heterosexual, as well as couples who are, identify with the LGBTQ community. So it's in all those cases, yeah, I agree that it can be effective and has research behind it for all these types of couples.
Yes. So why don't we talk about the scenarios? Do you have a scenario that you want to bring?
Cases. Yeah, let's talk about some of the most challenging situations and how Gottman and Imago approach these challenges. So let's see. What about what happens when? Well, we already talked a little bit about when one partner is at a different stage. So let's skip that one. But what about when there's been an infidelity? How do we help couples navigate the aftermath of an infidelity? What would you say?
This is a great topic, and it's a very common reason for couples to look for help. And I also have been learning how many couples they don't really talk about what is monogamy for them, right? Like when they start the relationship, usually, as I was saying before, there is all this magic and there is all this connection, and sometimes couples they just assume that they are gonna be monogamous, and that my idea of monogamy is the same as the idea of monogamy of my partner. And what I like to do with these kind of cases is, number one, when they are coming with this as the first reason, I really really work in developing a therapeutic alliance with the couple, right, before doing interventions. Because what they want to do, usually they want to come and they want to go to dive deep in this topic. And in some cases, there is a lot of shame, there is a lot of guilt, there is a lot of anger, there is a lot of pain. And it is easy for the couple to get cycle, to get trapped in a cycle of questioning and accusations and recriminations and punishment, actually, right? So what I like to do is, I think the starting point is defining what is infidelity for the relationship. What were the boundaries that were that were crossed or violated, and from that, understanding what is the wound, then we move to the possibility of reparation. But yeah, I'm glad that you are bringing this. How is in Gottman?
So Gottman approaches it from a three A's. The first step is atonement. Atonement is where the partner that's been betrayed, the way Gottman views it is that person is probably experiencing PTSD, the same symptoms of PTSD, right? This finding out this infidelity and is causing them to have trauma responses, right? As if they had PTSD. So that the first step is really giving the betrayed partner as much time as they need to get their questions answered, to get all their questions answered. And we don't go into detail of questions about actual sex, the actual act of sex, but we really give a lot of space for atonement and give as much space for the betrayed partner to get all their answers, their questions answered, right? The second, once that has happened fully to the betrayed partner's satisfaction, which can be very, very hard for the partner that betrayed, right? So I agree with you. There has to be really in the beginning building that therapeutic alliance, right? And validating how hard it must be for the partner who also betrayed, right? So it's a tricky balance that you have to find. But then the second part, once that has happened, then the next part is how to help partners attune. So that's the second. First is atonement, then attunement, how to get them to attune back to each other. So basically it's like the relationship house that they had has been destroyed, and we need to start over and rebuild their relationship and rebuild the levels of the house, rebuild the friendship, rebuild trust, rebuild commitment, rebuild how they talk to each other in conflict, and rebuild a shared sense of meaning. The whole house gets teared down when this happens, and so really it's about rebuilding that house. That's the second step in attunement, right? And the last step is attach. And this is where then we start really working with more of the usual interventions to help couples understand, okay, what needs weren't met before that maybe led to this? What are each other's needs, right? The infidelity probably started a long time before, when the needs of both of the partners weren't being met and weren't being expressed. So how can you do that now? How can you express what you need and what you feel, right? And so that's where we bring in more of the tools that we usually bring in with any couple. So yeah, that's what the approach is with Gottman.
That is awesome. I also like to remind them that many couples, they recover from infidelity or betrayal, and that probably they know a lot of couples that they overcome, but we usually don't hear about them.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
we only hear about the divorce, the trauma, right? But many couples, they work through this, and we don't know. We don't know about them because they reconnect and heal. Okay, Anna, another scenario that I want to ask you, because I want to know how is this from Gottman, is how is the approach when there is substance use? We no longer talk about dependency or addiction. We actually talk about substance use disorders, but we know that sometimes there is only experimental use, or somebody that is just having some episodes of binge drinking in the case of alcohol. But I want to know how substance use may show up, and how it is addressed in the context of a relationship from the Imago and the Gottman perspective. Can you talk about Gottman?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, this is often the case, that with couples that one or both struggle with some substance use, and sometimes it can be the reason they're seeking help. Other times it comes out during the assessment, right? So during the assessment process, I do screen for that, both in the questionnaires and in the individual sessions, to see if there's a substance use problem that needs to be looked at, right, and discussed. And the way that Gottman approaches it, many recovery pathways, like it's often the case that the individual that is struggling with substance use is told, okay, you do your recovery on your end, and the couple is not involved, right? Maybe the spouse or the partner is given some guidance, some support, some resources, but it's often the case that it's not done. Like the couple's work is not part of the recovery process, right? Whereas Gottman says, no, let's make it a part of the recovery process, right? Let's make it a part of the work. And I like how Gottman views it. They view the substance as a third party in the relationship. And it's helpful to explain to couples, it's, yes, it's like having a third person, almost like the substance is like a third person that's interfering in what happens between you two, right? And looking at substance as like the enemy, right? That impacts both of them, right? So helping couples think about it that way can be helpful, rather than pointing like the spouse that's not the person using substances, pointing at the person with the substance use disorder, like it's your fault, I can't trust you or whatever, looking at the substance as the culprit, right? So that's one thing. And then there's a lot of, with couples that struggle with substance use, a lot of psychoeducation about the impact of substances on the brain, right? But so basically, that's what I would say that is special about Gottman, how it treats when substance use is interfering in the relationship. And it's very important because one of the factors that helps people stay, in remission or stay sober, or I guess use harm reduction strategies, is if the family relationship improves, right? If the family relationship is more rewarding, they feel more connected to their spouse, that supports recovery, right? So, in addition to psychoeducation, a lot of the work is similar, having the couple dialogue about the impact of substance use, asking for what each of them needs, right? And really going from a point of getting to a point of understanding, dialoguing, and getting to a point of what's deeper than the substance use. What are the emotions underneath, right?
Mhm.
And feeling so connected to that, they can feel so connected to each other that that's the attachment that's more important than the attachment to the substance use. That's what I would,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, Anna. This is very interesting because in Imago we do actually the same.
Mhm.
Um, I think the old school for substance use was also very helpful. That if they prioritize the recovery of the person that is facing substance use disorders, then the couples process is gonna come after that. But we know that for in order to make that decision, it can be like months or years, and sometimes a couples psychotherapy process can facilitate and can be the point of inflection for
Mm,
people to take some decisions. From Imago, we say that substance use can be an exit in the relationship. An exit in the relationship can be an addiction, can be a use disorder, but can also be an infidelity, can also be compulsive relationship with work, can be also gambling, can be any situation that is taking the energy from the space in between. And I
mhm,
really, really love the metaphor that you were using. In my head, I was thinking that is right. Like this, in some situations, this is like a threesome. This is
mhm,
like a relationship with another entity that is
mhm.
being destructive for the relationship.
Yeah, so pretty similar.
Mhm.
Similar approach. Yeah, yeah, I love that. So let's talk about another one that's kind of tricky, that's scary for sometimes for us couples therapists, and it has to do with safety. What do you do in Imago to screen for and approach situations involving domestic violence? What would you say about that from an Imago standpoint?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, it is pretty similar because for some therapists, I think in other approaches, what they say is if there is a domestic violence, what we need to do is we need to protect the survivor, right? And we need to provide resources. We need to provide hotlines, places that provide legal advice, even in some cases, shelter, or obviously, even in some cases, notifying to the respective authorities, like if there is minors involved. And and I think that this is absolutely something that we need to do, but taking in consideration case by case, right? So sometimes the opportunity for what I have seen with other therapists, sometimes they say, "Oh, this is a domestic violence case. No, I can take your case. Look for someone else."
Mhm.
Right? And I
Mhm.
think that this can be an ethical dilemma, and this can be also harmful, because nobody is going to be able to receive this case and to really listen to them and to really understand what is going on and provide some resources.
Mhm.
So there is not like a magic recipe from Imago,
Mhm.
but we usually what we do is we try to listen to the persons in the relationship. We provide the resources that are needed, and we work very close with them. Not only with these cases, with any case, we work around the activation and the escalation. We have a lot of tools related with working with reactivity in the
Mhm.
relationship,
Mhm.
and I think that is something that is very useful. What
Mhm.
can you say about the Gottman approach?
Yeah, well, we definitely, that's one of the reasons in Gottman that we recommend the individual sessions, right? So that we can really talk to each partner separately and find out if there's someone that's being victimized, right? We differentiate between cases of characterological domestic violence and situational domestic violence, right? The statistics is that 1 in every 3 couples, according to Gottman research, experiences situational violence when they come to couples therapy, right? So it's not very uncommon, but those cases we can work with. I can work with cases where there's situational domestic violence, where it was, isolated events. It's not having to do with a person's character, where one person is when there's this cycle of violence where there's one clear perpetrator, one clear victim. In many cases, that's not the case. It's very situational, right? Those, when it's characterological, Gottman therapy is not indicated. When it's situational, yes, we can work with that. When it's characterological, we have to be very careful to protect the victim, to ensure that the victim gets resources, right? That they have resources about shelter, that they can access these resources, right? And we have to work very carefully with the partner to say, we don't think that couples therapy is the best. You need your own work. You really need your own space to process your emotions and your experiences. And before we do couples work, I recommend that you each do your own individual work. So that way you don't tell them, oh, we know you have, you are the perpetrator, and we know about this, right? We have to handle it very carefully to protect the victim, right? So that's how we do it. And yeah, like you said, with the situational domestic violence, it's a lot about de-escalating, about preventing them from getting to that point, right? Which leads to the next question, and the final scenario that we have that we want to talk about is like, what happens when there's escalation during the session, right? When one of the partners starts to become activated, starts raising their voice, maybe they threaten to leave the room or something like that. How do you, I know from the Gottman, I can talk a little bit about what Gottman does, and then you can share Imago. But that's one of the interventions that I like, that I find really effective with Gottman, is that we help the couple identify when they're getting flooded. Flooded means when their bodies are um, entering into fight or flight or freeze mode, right? When they are feeling threatened, right? They want to go into fight. Usually, in the case of escalation, they start raising their voice and they stop being able to hear each other because their blood is pumping to their heart and their abdomen to get them ready to fight or flight, and they don't get any blood to their brain, right? That's called flooding. It's a physiological response to feeling threatened, right? So we teach couples, and when we notice this happening, that one of them is starting to get activated, right? We teach couples to identify when this is happening. We might even teach them to take their heart rate and to notice if their heart rate is going above 100 beats per minute. And then we teach them, once they've identified the flooding, how they can self-soothe, how they can take a break, let their partner know, I'm feeling flooded. I need, how to take breaks and say, I need to step away for some time, 30 minutes minimum, do something else, and then come back within 24 hours to reconnect and continue the conversation, right? So that's how we handle it. Rather than let it happen in the session, if it starts to happen, to say, okay, this is a perfect example when I'm seeing that escalation starts to happen, let me teach you about flooding. Let me teach you about what happens to our bodies. It's not you, it's how we're built from evolution. That's how we're wired. And so let's try to calm down. And we do it in the session. I teach them, okay, let's do a progressive muscle relaxation exercise. Or I teach them how to do belly breathing or paced breathing. And I even teach the partner to be the one that guides them in the relaxation, right? So they help the partner regulate. They learn to help each other, right? So it's those two parts, identifying when you're being flooded and knowing how to take breaks. So that's how I would handle it. What about Imago?
It's pretty similar. Once again, we also help them to learn how to co-regulate, and I teach them on the second session instructions for timeout. Timeout is not I'm leaving the room, yelling or slamming the door. Timeout needs to communicate care, right? Needs to be an agreement that the partners make before it happens, and then pretty similar, at least 20-30 minutes, no more than 24 hours. And once they come back, they have three choices. One of the choices is they talk about it and they negotiate. The second one is if they are not ready to talk about it, they can agree another moment, right? Or maybe bringing this to the session. And the other one would be there is some cases with some topics that are going to be really, really impossible to connect, like political ideas, religion, and that is going to be some topics that are going to be out of the table because it's going to be impossible for they to connect. But yes, we do the same also in session, and every time that my clients start receiving services from me, in my informed consent, it is stated that they agree to put emotions in words, not in actions. And that is something that I am very, very clear at the beginning. And it is very useful for me because when there is an escalation, I can bring that back.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, a lot of similarities and a lot of things that I'm going to take away from this. I love learning more about Imago, and I think that it's helpful to bring in and offer couples the best, right? The best, and more tools the better, right? And more approaches the better. So I love learning about Imago.
Yes, and I hope that the audience is also enjoying this conversation as much as we do. And let's wrap up. Let's talk about some important key points about both perspectives. Do you want to start?
Sure. I want couples to know that there's hope. Sometimes when they come, starting couples therapy is a very courageous step. It's very scary sometimes. And couples, you might feel that you're going to be, you're going to be put in the hot seat, that one of you is going to be told you're wrong and the other person's right. Or you might be worried that this is going to lead to separation or a breakup or divorce, and it can be very scary, right? But there is hope. I trust this process of Gottman therapy very, very much. It's helped many, many couples. And in the beginning, I often tell my couples, I will hold the hope. for this relationship. Right now, you don't feel very hopeful, but I feel very hopeful. So I lend you hope. And I have a good track record for getting paid back. And so usually couples pay me back and I receive a lot of hope back, and that's beautiful. And I trust that, this process works. So I hope that people, whether it's with an Imago therapist, a Gottman therapist, or other approaches, that there's many out there, that people will reach out for help and that they'll be able to feel hopeful again in their relationship, connected, and that their relationship will be a source of joy and of meaning and purpose in their lives. And so, do you want to talk about that? Do you want me to share my social media, or first we talk about
Well, let
Imago?
me also join you, because it's beautiful what you just said about the hope, and the message that I have for the audience is, yes, couples therapy can be scary, but also I want to share that in some sessions, there is connection, there is joy, there is happy moments, and there is a lot of couples that sometimes come to my office and they really, really celebrate all the positive things that are going on. I think what I love about Imago and Gottman is that they are very focused on a culture of gratitude, on appreciation, and one of the sayings that is very common between couples therapists is, a healthy relationship should have 5 spoons of honey and 1 spoon of salt, right? In some other cases, they say 20, 20 and 5. And I love that, because couples therapy is not only for people on crisis, with addictions, with infidelity. It is also for people who want to grow, who want to do better, who want to improve, and keep working on the healthy parts. So that's what I want to say.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. So where can people find us? They can find me on my website, anaamaretherapy.com. Same on Instagram, Ana Amare Therapy. And, I'm also on Psychology Today. So you can reach out. We can schedule an initial 15-minute consultation at no cost. And I'd be happy to meet with you and your partner and find out, what's going on and how I can help you. And also want to invite our viewers, if they're interested and they're in Houston, to my upcoming workshop, which is going to be a 4-hour in-person workshop on a Saturday, April 11th from 9 to 1, where I'm going to be teaching some of these basic skills. So if you're not ready for couples therapy, or maybe you don't need it, but you want, like Emilio said, to just grow and do better in your communication and in your conflict management and in your friendship with your partner, then I invite you to come. It'll be with other couples, but it's maximum 5 couples, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm so excited to share some of these tools with 5 couples.
Thank you, Anna. And I want to mention also the same, that I also I am open for working with couples. I'm also committed to listen to any inquiry, and if I am not a match, just helping the couple to find the right match. My website is SpanishCounselor.com, and my social media networks are at Spanish Counselor. So I also do workshops. You can find information in my social media, and very happy to have this conversation with you, Anna. I really, really like all what you offer in your private practice, and I'm your big fan. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me.
Likewise, Emilio. It was such a pleasure and so interesting to hear about your approach. And I think the couples that see you are very, very, very lucky. And I'm grateful for having done this video. And I hope that it reaches many people that need to, to listen to this.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye-bye.